Good morning, good morning, good morning. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, get settled in. I will be right with you. Good morning, friends. How the heck are you this fine morning today? I will, in fact, remember to turn the music down. I know I often don't. I'm super excited. I've got Kevin and Alan joining us today. I had the opportunity to meet these two gents when they invited me to be on their podcast. So super pumped about the conversation that we had. We probably could have made a 5-hour podcast out of it, but we didn't. So I thought it would be great to have them on here and talk a little bit about the one thing every man needs to know. And I'm dying to know what that is. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
We are living the dream, my friend. We appreciate you having us on.
So happy to be here. So grateful that we got to meet you, and thank you for coming on our show. Grateful to return the favor.
Yeah, so tell us who's who and tell us a little bit about who you guys are.
Oh boy. So I'm Kevin Palmieri. I am the creator and now the co-host of the HyperConscious podcast. I'm also a professional speaker. I have a podcast agency called Podstrong, and we are 430 something episodes into this journey. And the person I was before this is nothing like the man I am today, and we'll get into that obviously, but that's just a little bit about who I am.
Strong work.
Pretty quick, right?
That's hard to follow. That's hard to follow because I'm not quite as concise as Kevin. So my name's Alan Lazarus. I'm a professional speaker, fitness model, obviously a podcaster, co-host of the HyperConscious podcast. I have a consulting firm, Alan Lazarus Consulting, where I help businesses scale their impact and their profitability online, especially right now with all the stuff going on in the world. If your business is not online, that's definitely a problem. And that problem will continue to increase if you make that transition now. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm ready to talk.
Yeah. I think let's just hammer it, Mike. Let's just hammer it.
Awesome. Well, you know, it's funny, Alan, when you said obviously, I thought that was coming back to the fitness model. I'm a fitness model, obviously. I say that all the time, but nobody believes me.
Well, when you say marathoner, we believe you.
Right?
So. Because you're looking fit over there.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think I've got the runner's physique, no doubt. I'm not sure I got the fitness model physique though. I got to tell you though, and I've got to come back to this. Have you ever seen Bon Jovi's Versace ad?
Mm-mm.
So when we're done here, Google Bon Jovi and Versace. He did an ad where he's like pretty much in the buff and he's wrapped with a Versace blanket and he's just ripped and he's kind of my build, like he's a smaller dude. But he just looks amazing. And he was 50 years old when he posed for that. And I came across that when I was probably 42, 43. And I said to my fitness trainer at the time, I actually texted her that picture. And I said, this is what we're working towards. I want to actually recreate this Photoshop shoot when I'm 50. Nice. And I didn't. I'm 51 this year. So I haven't done it yet, but I feel like at some point I will probably get back to do that. But for the longest time, that was her contact image for me, was this half naked picture of Bon Jovi. It was quite funny.
Nice. You got to have a vision. I like it.
Absolutely. So tell me, where are we going to get started? What does every man need to know?
I think
your title.
Well, and I think it comes from the episode that we talked about. Like when we talked about vulnerability. And I know that's your big thing and that's your talking point. But I think it's rare. It's very rare that we come across somebody who knows more about vulnerability when it comes to being a man than we do. Like we've kind of been that, not expert, but like anytime we're on a show, that always gets brought up. And this is a quote that Alan and I get all the time, especially from women who interview us. Oh my God, where do I find a man like you? That happens all the time. And it's, again, I am so far from perfect. It's not even funny. I make mistakes every day. But I think vulnerability is something that if a man can understand what it is and the benefits, it will change his life. I believe that.
Yeah, I would second that as well. What is the one thing a man needs to know? I would say, so I told you this story on our show, or I think it was after our show in the post-amble, but I was at an event, Brendan Burchard's event, Influencer Academy with Kevin, about 2 years ago now, or maybe a year and a half or so. But I remember this woman came on stage, Natalie Hodson, and what her kind of claim to fame, for lack of better phrasing, was that she actually peed herself during a video, and she shares this openly, because she had had several kids. And that's something that a lot of women struggle with after they've had kids, is they accidentally pee themselves when they laugh or whatever. And she did it on a video that got posted. And then so many women were reaching out, empathizing, because that's a challenge that a lot of women have. And what she ended up talking about in her speech, I will never forget. She said the number one point of shame based on the research in America for females is body image. And I was a fitness coach at the time, and most of my clients were female. And so that resonated so highly of like, yeah, that's so clear, right? We put this image of whether it's Kim Kardashian or whoever, this impossible, what you're supposed to look like image in front of women their whole life. Even when you watch, Kevin and I talk about this, or we used to a while ago, like even when you watch movies, you're even if it's a movie that takes place in high school,
Oh yeah.
it's like a 25-year-old woman who's a fitness model who's pretending to be in high school. And when you're a kid, you don't know that. And for guys, it's like, that dude's actually 31 and he's playing a 17-year-old. So when you're 17 and haven't hit puberty yet, like me, it makes you insecure. But here's my point. What does a man need to know? I think that body image for women in this country is success and financial success for men in this country. And so for me, I don't think I ever fully understood how insecure I was about my own success and how I didn't feel like a man if I wasn't unbelievably competent, unbelievably intelligent, unbelievably capable, and unbelievably confident. And so I think what men tend to do is they put up this front of confidence that isn't real because we've been portrayed that way for so long. That's how you're supposed to be. So what does a man need to know? You're not supposed to be anything. That's all nonsense. And you're supposed to be who you choose to be. And if you're insecure about success, I would say that you're most likely going to put up a front that isn't real and be unfulfilled. I know I did that for a long time, and I know Kevin suffered from that as well.
Kevin, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, going into Alan and I's stories, like at one point we both had 6-figure incomes. I was a bodybuilder at the time, so I was in the best shape out of anybody I knew. I had a girlfriend who was literally a model. Like she was unbelievably gorgeous. You know, I had a nice brand new car. I had a brand new apartment. Like I had everything that anybody could ever want. But like I didn't feel successful. I was miserable, right? I was insecure. I put all of my value into external things. I never worked on myself. I didn't have to work on myself. I could work on my body. I could work on my car. I could work on my bank account, my investments. And this is the thing too. Even the people who get super close to you will never know the truth unless you let them. Like everybody thought I was a badass. Here's this kid who's into fighting, who's into weightlifting, who's the bodybuilder, you know, who has all the tattoos, who has the beautiful girlfriend, who has all these things. At the end of the day, those are all fronts.
Right.
And nobody could get close enough to me to even see what it was. So I think ego is another thing.
Right.
I think Alan and I always talk about ego, especially as a man. If you want to make a change in your life, you usually have to lower your ego, because in order to face the truth, you first have to see the truth. And that is usually hidden behind the cloak of an ego.
What's interesting is when I did fitness coaching, you think you want a six-pack. What you really want is self-esteem. And so for any men out there, you think you want to be successful, and you do, but what you really want is self-esteem. So if your self-esteem is all tied to externals, like I remember when Kevin and I first started working together, he had the sports car, right? He did have a gorgeous girlfriend. And I remember as a man, I used to literally see pictures of him on Instagram with ripped abs and a beautiful girlfriend. And I used to literally think to myself, like, wow, like I genuinely had envy. And I don't know if I've ever actually said that to him before, but it's interesting because I think that, again, it goes back to that analogy of like, you put this perfect model, which by the way, the models don't even look like the models.
Right.
And we've met several of them and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, it's just, there's a lot of stuff you can do with video and photo editing
and lighting
and, you know, trust me, Kevin and I look in shape on this camera right now. Put us out in the sun with a bathing suit on. There's not an ab scene. I promise you that.
No.
Right. And so that's an interesting thing, right? So what body image is to women, imagine now that same thing, but for men, Lamborghinis, mansions, cars, you know, cribs, you know, rich and famous. A lot of those people are in debt. And it's just such an interesting thing. The entrepreneurship revolution in particular. A lot of business owners, there's a great book. We're both reading it. You told me to read it. Profit First.
Profit First.
And he talks about how like when you ask an entrepreneur, like, how's business going? Like if you asked us right now, like, how's business going? We'd be like, yeah, it's great. It's great. It's amazing. Just crushing it. Right. But in reality, like there's some challenges. There's some financial issues. There's some cash flow problems that we need to overcome individually and collectively. But we don't talk about that. We just say business is great. Why? Because we want everyone to do business with us. And if we create uncertainty, we're so afraid that if we're truthful, people won't, well, you're a business consultant. How could you have financial issues, right? So I think vulnerability, you got to be vulnerable with yourself and you got to be vulnerable with your closest loved ones. If in business and in the marketplace, if you want to keep your brand image, that's understandable. I get why that is. But in your personal life, do not do that because otherwise your relationships will fail. And I honestly believe that's why a lot of successful men end up divorced. Most of my mentors are divorced and they're super successful multimillionaires, but you know, they didn't necessarily work on that inner part quite as much. And I think that that's a huge challenge.
I think the other thing too is you can't, if you're in a relationship, you can't just expect to start being vulnerable with your partner. You could start with your friends. I'm convinced of this. Your relationships, whether they're intimate, business, friendships, whatever, the level of your vulnerability with that person is the level of your relationship. It is that simple. And Alan and I are such good business partners and friends and co-hosts and supports for each other because we know everything. There's nothing I don't know about Alan. I know more about Alan than anybody else, sometimes to my detriment. And Alan knows more about me than anybody else, right? But I think having that sounding board of like, you, for instance, Mike, if you're having a rough day, I'm sure you have built in people in your life that like, yeah, they know they might get a text from me and it might be ugly. Like it might be the ugly cry. It happens. Right. But it's the people who don't ever open up to one person. Like just start with one person because if you can't be vulnerable, you can't be you. Because at the end of the day, we're all hiding from something, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the question that I always come back to and that I struggle with as a guy that sort of preaches this is how do you get guys to buy into this? How do you get guys to follow this? Because, you know, and I'll maybe come back to this in a couple of minutes, but, you know, you do see the role models out there still by and large, even though I think we're having a lot more of this conversation, are the, you know, the self-help gurus that are posing in front of the Lambos and the multi-million-dollar beach house that they rented by the hour so they could do the video so they could rope you in. Like, and again, as you said, you know, I'm a guy that I ran a mortgage brokerage for 17 years. So I used to take finance applications from these people. So I saw their actual financial position. And you're absolutely right. The guys with the big fancy trucks, the skidoos, the boats, the cars, the houses, 9 times out of 10, they had a negative net worth. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, certainly not something to strive for. But coming back to my question, how do we make this cool?
So people are always surprised to hear when they see Kevin and I that we have 90% female listeners. And usually they're surprised at first, and then I can witness it in real time. They draw their own conclusion. Oh, it's because you're jacked and good looking. That's not the real reason. That's not the real reason.
And humble.
Every single, yeah, thank you. Yeah, right. And humble. That's the real reason. The truth of the matter is that it's because we're vulnerable. And I can literally, whenever I've ever told someone, so our listeners are 90% women who struggle with courage, clarity, and confidence, who want more fulfillment out of their career and their intimate relationship. We told you that before you came on our show, because who are you talking to is super important.
Right.
But whenever I tell someone that, they immediately go, really? I would never have thought that. Then I can see them go, oh, okay, that's right. So they're watching you because you look the way you do. The real reason they're watching is because we're vulnerable. And here's my point to answer your original question. Your relationships, like Kevin said, if you want to be happy and fulfilled in any relationship, it's going to require a level of vulnerability, because David Meltzer, our coach, says the truth vibrates the fastest. I can't even tell you how many times I've said, you know what, Kev, I didn't mean to, but I lied to you about this thing and it's been bothering me. And every single time he was always warm about it. My girlfriend, Emilia, I have literally never lied to her, not even about something simple. And I'll tell you a very quick story. So I was swimming in her lake, and it was raining out, and she doesn't want me to swim across the lake because she's scared that I'll get hit by one of the boats or whatever. But it was raining, so everyone was in for lunch, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna swim across this lake. So I went out near the center. I could sense on some energetic level that she's probably watching and getting insecure about me being out here. So I'm gonna swim back. Later on, I was telling her this story. We were talking about it, and I said that I swam to the middle and back 3 times. That was just my ego saying, adding embellishment, just embellishing. It was actually twice. 2 weeks later, I literally go back to her and say, sweetheart, I don't know why, but I got to tell you this because I refuse to ever lie to you. I actually only swam 2 times, but my ego told you 3, and I never want to lie to you. She was the amount of certainty and security that she has in our relationship, because I was willing to tell her that I lied about something that small. Now she knows in her heart of hearts that I will never lie about anything again. And to me, that's made our relationship immediately better. And if you're out there and you're a guy and your female, your woman is insecure about anything, you know that's going to cause challenges in your relationship. If you're traveling, she's going to think you're doing something. Don't create trust through vulnerability. And then that foundation will be able to build a skyscraper rather than building a skyscraper on the sand that's going to, topple over during the first storm.
I actually did something very similar where my girlfriend asked how many tickets we had sold to an event that we were co-hosting.
Oh, God.
And it was early on. And I literally was like, not a clue. And she's like, is there any way you can find out? I said, I'm not in charge of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. And literally like a few days later, I was like, all right, so I got to tell you something. I lied to you about that. And she wasn't mad at all. But it's the fact of like, why did I lie? Because I was insecure. Because I didn't want to tell you we sold 25 tickets and we're aiming for 200. Like, I don't want you to be uncertain and not be sure of this future about, oh, is Kevin going to actually be successful and all that stuff. This is the other thing I would say. Your partner, if you're in a relationship, wants you to be more vulnerable. I will almost guarantee it, because by default, you probably are not vulnerable enough, because most people aren't. Most people are taught that vulnerability is a bad thing. Yeah. I would say this, if people really want to change this, you have to check in with why you're not vulnerable to begin with. Why aren't you confident? You were taught not to be, right? Somewhere along the journey, somebody made you not confident. Maybe you failed at something. Maybe somebody told you weren't able to succeed. Okay, now you take that with you. Why are you afraid of the things you're afraid of? Because they harmed you in your past. Something in your past is probably holding you back from being vulnerable. I would say it's probably your ego or your insecurities. When you do that, you will connect better with your partner. The relationship will be better. The communication will be better. The sex will be better. Everything will be better. It's just a matter of testing the waters and making sure for yourself.
Fire.
Yeah, there's no question. It boggles my mind because I find myself doing the same thing. Like, why do we do that little embellish when we really don't need to? I mean, 2 laps is still impressive. Why do I need to add a 3rd? I found myself doing that just the other day, talking about a show that I did with the CEO of an organization that's a $1.2 billion market cap. I said 1.3. And I just like, dude, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, nobody, I mean, first off, it doesn't matter. Nobody gives a shit.
I'd have gone 1.5. I'm kidding.
Yeah, but I still found myself embellishing. And again, it's not even, it's not like it's my accomplishment.
Right.
Did you know in the moment, Mike? Did you know when you said it? Like,
I did.
So I think that's the thing, is how quickly can you go from knowing you're lying, not lying, but knowing you're being untruthful, to do you jump back in and say, actually, you know what? I misspoke there. It's actually 1.2. Or do you take that, like, do you just keep taking that line forever?
Yeah, it's just so bizarre that, I mean, I don't understand, like, why is that our nature? Why is that our natural tendency? And I try really hard not to do that. And it's funny because I feel like sometimes that's almost a hindrance for me. When I tell these stories about ultra marathons, I was listening. I don't want to bash the guy because he's done some amazing things, but I was listening to Goggins yesterday. Yeah. And he's talking about his 24-hour race that he did. And I've done several 24-hour races, but the way that he was embellishing, and again, maybe it's not even embellishing, but it's just the way he described the story versus how I would have described the story, absolutely it's challenging. Absolutely it's difficult. Absolutely there are times, but I mean, you would have thought he was taking gunfire while running laps on this thing. It's just, again, it boggles my mind, but that's what people tend to respond to, especially when, guys like you and I are in this public space and we're building an audience. The tendency or the want is to sort of embellish these accomplishments to make them more appealing to those kind of guys. And I just kept coming back to, those are not my people, and that's okay.
I think what it comes down to, I'm always trying to look for the acorn. We've talked about that a little bit. I feel like I've known you for years, Mike. We talked about this about 6 years ago, 4 times. No, I'm kidding. So I'm always looking for the acorn. I think men are fighting for significance. And that's what that embellishment is. I have a mentor who once said, Alan, you always want to err on the high side of perception. Just make sure it's truthful. And I don't know if I want to do that anymore. We talk about drive to 5, right? On the 10 end, if you're a 10, this is just a simple framework. You are overly confident. In other words, your confidence is way higher than your competence.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not a power position. Okay. If you're a 0, you have self-doubt, you struggle, your competence is way beyond your self-esteem and your confidence. We drive to 5. 5 is the truth. 5 is not embellishment, but it's also not modesty that's fake. Some people would rather just appear modest, like, oh, I'm not. Say it like it is. And I think that the benefit of truth, I think for women, they're not women. The feminine energy craves love above everything, love and connection. Okay. And that's why I think society makes women believe that they'll get love from having this perfect body. Okay. Right. Men, society makes men feel like they'll get significance from all this success. Okay. And that drove us from a very young age, naturally and understandably, until we became hyper-conscious and aware of it and said, you know what, this is a losing game. Like for me, I got in a tough car accident and I almost died. And I realized this is a losing game. I don't want to play this game anymore. Kevin was suicidal, as he's told you about. And he was like, you know what, this is a losing game too. And then we went all in on fulfillment and our character. But I think the acorn is significance for the masculine energy. If you're a masculine energy, you do crave significance, whether you want to admit it or not. As a matter of fact, avoiding that fact means it'll control you.
Yes.
And that's why I lied to instead of 2 laps, it was 3. It's that's still that little seed of significance. And if you're a feminine energy, you crave love and connection so much. You just got to be aware of that. Understand what's driving you. And what I would say is replace the need for significance or love and connection with growth and contribution. And I think that you'll get more love and significance than you ever would have otherwise.
Right.
Powerful.
Oh, I like that. I one of the chapters in my book is actually titled From Success to Significance. And for me, that was kind of, and maybe it's a touch different meaning, but it was moving from that perception of success. I'd done all the things. I'd had the fancy car. I'd made the big income. But how do I move that to a position of significance where I'm actually showing up in the world and contributing rather than just being successful?
I think it's a control thing too, Mike, especially from a masculine perspective of like, you can get significance. And Tony Robbins says this, if I walk into the studio and hold a gun to Alan's head, there's nobody more significant to Alan than me.
Right.
And I think a lot of men are getting significance, but it's from sending pictures of your junk to somebody. That's significance. Whether or not like the person receives it in your mind, it's like, hell yeah, this is about me. Or, just talking terribly about people. That's significance. That's certainty. Right. You feel better than that person. But I almost think that you have to give up control to some degree. So Alan and I, in our intimate relationships, every week we do check-ins. I actually skipped this week, so I would lie if I said I did this week, but we skipped this week. But you kind of like, you're going into this and you're just giving up control. You're saying like, all right, I'm the plane, you're controlling me. You tell me where I've been diving, dipping, where I'm going to land. Like, but what comes from that is connection. What comes from that is sustainability. What comes from that is growth and knowledge and wisdom, and you learn your partner better. But if you always go in having to know what's going to happen and have to be in control, you're never going to land where you should, right? You're always going to be leading the dance when sometimes you got to follow.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Alan.
So I had a tough check-in this past week. So we asked 5 questions to each other. One of them is there anything about me, my character, or our experiences together that are in any way misaligned with your highest self? Okay, when you ask your partner a question like that, you're going to get the truth of the feedback. And that feedback sometimes might not be what you wanted, right? And so, but here's the thing. You cannot make good decisions based on false data. If you're out there right now and you've been telling everybody that you're benching 225 for 5 reps for significance and telling that story and everyone thinks you're awesome for a moment, that's actually a long-term loss. And here's why. Because the guy who's actually benching 225 isn't out there telling that story to everybody. He's actually in the gym working harder than you. And he's going to be more successful and get more significance. Perfect example. And this is Men Up. Right. So this is a really cool thing that I've never gotten to share publicly, but I remember my hero, Greg Plitt, said this story. He said, you walk into the gym, right? It's leg day. Okay. And the squat rack's in the corner. And you see Sally there and you want Sally. Sally's beautiful. And Sally, you have a crush on. All of a sudden it's arm day right next to Sally. If you are being controlled by that, you will always lose in the long run, because the guy in the corner doing squats like he intended is the one Sally wants to date.
Right.
And that's just the God honest truth.
Sally. Shout out to Sally.
Yeah, I don't know why I chose Sally.
I like it. I like it. That's a great story.
See, that's exactly why I don't go around telling everybody I can bench 225.
If you had said that, we'd have been like, interesting. How?
All right. There may be other reasons I don't say that.
This is fun. This is good.
I like it.
So again, I come back. So how did you guys figure this stuff out? What was the tipping point
Oh man,
for you?
massive failure over time.
Yeah, but you know what? Lots of people have that and don't make that pivot, don't make that shift, don't make that connection. So how did you?
I think honestly, when Alan and I met, we both had core competencies. Like I've always been vulnerable, kind of, in a different way. I was doing Instagram lives before Instagram lives were a thing. Like when and we're talking back in like 2012, like I was preaching on the internet before anybody else was doing it. And I didn't even know what the hell I was talking about. But a lot of it was about settling. A lot of it was about my own inner crap. And like I was coaching people back then about relationships, even though I was failing at them. I had an understanding at a different level of like, yeah, but this, like your boyfriend's lying to you. What does that actually mean? Okay. You shouldn't be with him. So I think when Alan and I linked up as this partnership, as this company now, I was really good with being vulnerable and Alan was really good at long-term decision-making. And I think we kind of rubbed off on each other. And Alan taught me like different stuff. I taught Alan different stuff. And I think we drove to 5. And now we kind of call each other out on what we think the other person might know. A lot of times I'll just say like, this is your area of expertise. Like, that's not me. This is what I'm good at. I'll do this. And I think it was just the addition of his relationship experience, my relationship experience, my emotionally driven decisions, his logic decision. I think it was just the perfect storm, honestly.
Really, really good answer.
I never thought of that until like kind of now.
Yeah, this is a really cool breakthrough session, honestly, just because these questions are awesome. So it goes back to, I think, the drive to 5. So Kevin and I were raised by 2 women. So I had an older sister, 3 years older than me, and my mom. My father passed away in a car accident when I was 2 years old. And so I think intuitively, so he was raised by his grandma and his mother, and neither one of us had a father really growing up. And I think not having that strong male role model with that stoic front helped us intuitively understand these things. And yeah, maybe we still put up that front in the marketplace, so to speak, like in public.
Yeah.
But in private, I do think we were always probably more vulnerable naturally than men, just because we were raised by the feminine energy. So I think that's an acorn there for sure. But one thing that has happened with Kevin and I do think that I was really good, and I do still think I'm really good at success. Like, here's an outcome. I will figure out how to go get it. Okay, bottom of Wachusett, top of Wachusett, I'll get there no matter what, even if it kills me. And I do think the long-term strategy of like, okay, these are the inputs, here's the outputs, Newton's third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I love that. Okay, strategy. The thing is that's only one piece. So we use physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Okay. I think that Kevin was more emotionally driven and I was more mentally driven. Okay. So I'm more of like a strategist, like a chess player. Kevin's more of a feeler. Okay. And so on one end, you've got success, achievement, inputs and outputs, self-discipline, all that left brain stuff. On the other side, you've got warmth, love, emotions, love, connection, intuition. And so Drive to 5, I taught Kevin, in my opinion, how to be successful, more successful. And he taught me how to be vulnerable. Right. And my relationships, my intimate relationship in particular, is infinitely better thanks to Kevin. And I think he's far more successful thanks to me. Yes. And so because we had the same mission to help as many people as possible, we were able to drive to 5. And we've driven to 5 countless times. It still happens. It happened yesterday.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, the great point here is we value this. I remember in our old studio, I would tell Alan, like, dude, I will have the biggest heart. You can't beat me. Like, you will not beat me. But we value.
It has to be a competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
Right.
And we value this so much that, like, I want to be the best podcaster. I want to be the best speaker. I want to be the best, podcast service in the world. I want all those things. But if I can't be the best man doing it, I don't want them. I want to be the best father and the best husband and the best man I can be. At the end of the day, every single decision I make is based on that. And this could be detrimental too, but even when it comes to business, I have to be authentic. I have to do it with my heart. And we value it so highly that it's like, there's no way Alan or I could work with somebody else that isn't like this, because we spend so much time together on this goal that we have invested our entire lives in, right? So, like, part of that for us is becoming the best versions of us, and this is forcing us to do that, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite guiding questions. A friend of mine, a fellow by the name of Drew Dudley, who's another leadership expert speaker, he talks about this. He says he sort of gave me this, and I've really grabbed onto it. When making a decision, the question becomes, what would the man I want to be do in this situation? And then, usually that's a pretty easy answer, because you can do some mental gymnastics to get to the answer you think you want because it's a shortcut.
Right.
But deep down, the answer in a heartbeat. So I love that.
I do that fairly often. I always say, what would the best version of Kevin do? I was laying on the couch the other day, and one of the blinds was tucked around the rod. So it was like sticking out. And I was like, and I looked at it for a second, and I said, what would the best version of Kevin do? And I was like, just get up and do it. So I got up and fixed it and laid back down. Like, I always try to do that. But like you said, there's always a way around it. You can always logic your way around it. But I think with practice, like, if you do anything long enough, it becomes easier and it can become a habit.
Well, I was going to say, that's the beauty of that kind of thing, and using that as an opportunity to practice. Because when you can do that kind of thing with the little decisions that are really meaningless in the grand scheme of things, I mean, whether you fix the blinds or not,
right,
isn't going to impact the world. But it's that repetition, that practice. I mean, it's the same thing as going to the gym and doing those squat reps. Squat reps aren't going to change the world, but it's going to change the way you look.
Yeah.
So getting that practice in.
One thing that I do think is one of the root causes of why a lot of masculine energies struggle is goals outside of alignment. So I created recently something called the alignment audit. It does goals, behaviors, values, beliefs. A simple example is if you have a goal to get to 200 pounds, which I hit today, by the way.
Congrats. I just 185.5.
Thank you. I was 201 actually. I was so excited. I stepped on the scale today. I finally hit that goal, which is cool. It's not like I started that probably a month ago, but okay. If you have a goal to reach 200 pounds, okay, what are the behaviors underneath that I must do? I must eat 3,000 calories a day. I must lift heavy weight. Right? So what are the behaviors? So you have goal, behavior. What are the values? I must value fitness. I must value my physique. I must value good sleep so my muscles recover. Okay, what are the beliefs? I must believe I can do it. I must believe it'll be worth it. I must believe that it's possible for me, all these things. So the alignment audit is a good way to make sure that your goals are in alignment with who you want to be. And so when I was really young, I was very goal-oriented. I wanted to get the President's Award straight A's in high school, did it. Wanted to be a Fortune 50 CEO, was on my way to that. Here's the problem. Kevin and I did an episode called The Reasons to Set Goals. The 7th reason was to get the goal, and it was the least important reason. And so what is the real purpose of a goal? I'll give you an example of a bad one and a good one quickly. A bad goal is, okay, let's say I intend to be a millionaire, which I do. But let's say I'm not clear on my core values. Okay, someone comes to me and says, Alan, will you help me grow my wine company? Okay, I personally, alcohol has caused me more suffering. And I think alcohol has caused more suffering in the world than any other substance. That's just my belief, but that's because I'm clear on it. When I wasn't hyper-conscious, I would have just done that because, well, I want to be a millionaire and this is a $10,000 opportunity, And so if you have a goal, but you're not clear on your core values, you'll do anything to achieve it if you're a masculine energy. Be aware of that, okay? So it's not just about getting the goal. Now I have the same goal. I intend to be a millionaire, but now I'm crystal clear on wanting to impact as many people as possible in the HyperConscious podcast in order to achieve it. So if you're out there right now and you're goal-oriented, which you most likely are if you're listening to this, that's great. That is great. But be very, very careful of letting those goals bring you outside of integrity with yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know if I mentioned this when we talked last time, but I actually don't set goals. And I wrote a whole piece on why I stopped setting goals. And instead I do values, intentions, and milestones. Because too often, and even you said it, and I challenge you a little bit on this. I suspect that you get there, but you start with the goal. Like when you rattled off your audit, you started with the goal and values were the third. Whereas for me, the values first.
Interesting.
Then my intentions, how do I want to show up? And then milestones, which are obviously a much more akin to a goal, but that's just a waypoint. And if I don't hit my milestone, who gives a shit? If I'm living my values, I'm living my intention, then whether or not I hit my milestone really doesn't matter. Do I have $1 million in the bank? Who cares? Is that a milestone I want to hit? Yeah, absolutely. But does it really matter if I don't get there, if I stay true to my values and intentions? So, and we talked about this before, my intention when I show up to a conversation like this is that it becomes life-changing. And what I love about, I love that drive for 5. I think that's really powerful for me. That's something that will change my life, no question. I'm going to hang on to that. I want to circle back to the check-in for a minute. So when you were talking about the check-in, you were talking about with your intimate partner?
Yeah.
Do you guys do that together?
Us four? No. We do it separately.
We are actually going to start doing that.
No. Yeah. Does Kevin and Alan do the check-in?
Oh, we're going to start because I think the funny thing is it usually takes a break. You're either proactive or reactive. So either like I'll lose my cool and then we like, there's something, there's a problem here. We should probably fix this. Or it's basically like, hey, is there anything that I'm doing that's bothering you? For a while, Alan's being late was bothering me. And I never told him about it. I would just get really angry and my state would be off when he'd come into the studio. He'd know, but we never fix it because we never had to talk about it. So eventually it got to the point where he's like, is there anything bothering you? And I was like, yeah, man, I'm sick of you being late all the time. Like, WTF, mate. And then we talked about it and he crushed it since then.
I appreciate that.
Right? So long story short, yes, we're going to start doing check-ins.
It's literally on my to-do list. So I think that any challenge in any relationship comes down to these 3 things. There's either a goal in conflict, a core value in conflict, or a belief in conflict. So we were on a team call recently, and one of our team members, so Amy, Tiff, and Natalie, 3 incredible women, are on our team, and they got to witness Kevin and I come in and have conflict resolution. And so I think we went into that call with the same goal, but with a different belief of how to achieve it. Okay. And imagine someone has very, very high confidence, but low awareness. That's a recipe for disaster. Some would argue that that's what arrogance is. I've been there at least once, right? Yes. So I would argue that there was an awareness that Kevin did not have. And there was probably an awareness that I didn't have. And we were both very confident in our own belief. And so we eventually got to the point where he went vulnerable and he said, honestly, I think I'm just afraid, I'm overwhelmed, and I can't handle anything more right now. And I'm afraid that this is going to come and fall on me. And once he went vulnerable, then I went vulnerable. And then literally Natalie, who's new to our team, was like nearly in tears, if not in tears, of like, I'm so grateful to be on a team with you guys because I just got to witness in real time what you guys do for conflict resolution. And honestly, that gave me more fulfillment than almost anything else. Any of the accolades of like the number of listens and all that, that's all great. But I do love the fact that she was able to witness us be vulnerable and how we work through that which is difficult. Because if you're going to go into business, and you know this, like, okay, there's going to be goals in conflict. There's going to be values in conflict at times, and there's definitely going to be beliefs in conflict. And in an intimate relationship, same deal. Do you have a system that checks, like, are there any goals in conflict? Like, I want this and you want this. Okay, so I love fitness, but you kind of don't. I'm going to bed late. You're going to bed early. Like, you gotta reconcile that. And then what's the value underneath that and the belief underneath that? And I think conflict resolution is realigning as a team and collaborating. And I think that it's really important for everybody in business, any partnership, any friendship, any intimate relationship. I think that, you know, identifying that root cause and then going vulnerable is gonna change the game.
And it goes both ways, because after I said that, one of the other young ladies on our team said, honestly, I feel the same way.
Right.
So that's the thing about vulnerability. And Alan and I went to New York to interview somebody by the name of Tori Aletto. She's a relationship expert. And we were talking about porn. And I'll never forget this, because Alan was like, I can't believe you said that. And in the middle of the interview, I said, yeah, I used to be addicted to porn. I still am addicted to porn. I don't know that I would say I'm not addicted to it.
But you don't use it anymore.
No,
Okay,
I don't know. Yeah. So literally shortly thereafter, somebody messaged me on Instagram and said, hey man, any tips for me getting over porn? And it was like, if I allowed the fear of judgment, is anybody going to message me and be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're addicted to porn. You're such a loser. Maybe, but you know what? My level of awareness is higher. Guess what? You're probably addicted too. You just don't know it, or you're not willing to admit it. That's fine. My level of awareness is just higher. And also my desire to impact is also higher. When you throw something out there vulnerable, everybody has the opportunity to say, me too. Me too. Me too. Oh, I can't believe you said that. I've always been so afraid to do it. You create an open dialogue for something that everybody's afraid to talk about. And that's how change is made in the beginning.
Yeah, it's that Me Too thing is so powerful. I'm working with a client right now who just got to be careful what I disclose and how I do this, is having some struggles and having some real struggles, and kind of gave me the you don't understand. And I said, look, you're right. I don't understand your specific thing, but you also need to understand that on a planet of 7 billion, there's probably 6 billion that feel the exact same way. And long story short, at the end of the conversation, when she realized that her overcoming her challenge, she'd be able to share that with the world, which would help other people overcome their challenge. Like, that just became such a powerful motivator. And being able to take that step and do the things that they need to do to sort of get over that or get through this struggle. It was really cool just to see that switch flicked when they realized that I'm not alone. And again, I guess intellectually they probably knew that they weren't alone, but just having somebody spell that out and actually giving them an example of, this is how it shows up for me, and being like blown away. So yeah, that Me Too thing is just so powerful.
Yeah, we did an episode last night on the top 10 takeaways from 430 episodes of our show. And one of them was, you know, Evan Carmichael?
No.
I think he's in Toronto. So he's a very big YouTuber, professional speaker, coach, all that stuff. But his thing is, your purpose comes from your deepest pain. So for me, hitting rock bottom and having no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and I wasn't competent enough to achieve what I wanted. It's my goal to be the person that I needed when I was at my lowest point. My purpose comes from my deepest pain. But in order for me to help people with their pain, I first have to admit mine. If I just hold it in, nobody's ever going to know what I went through. Nobody's ever going to be able to say like, wow, you did that, I can do that too. Right? So I think that's exactly what that lady was going through, of like, oh, you know what? If I lean into this, I can actually make a change with this rather than letting it affect my life forever. My coffee's gone. Gotta say, Moose.
I think that you cannot solve a problem that you don't first admit you have. And so I often talk about how it took me 5 years to quit alcohol. I'm 412 days sober, or I think a little more than that now. Last time I checked, it was that, though. And I remember I've been around people who do, in my opinion, have an alcohol problem, but they never admitted it. Still to this day, they say, "Oh no, like I don't have an issue with." Okay, well then you'll never solve it. You'll never actually overcome it if you don't think it's a problem. We all have these things that we know deep down are like not benefiting us or others, or maybe we have these things that are definitely affecting others negatively on some level, but we want to hide from it. Not being vulnerable is hiding from the truth. Period. And I had to admit to myself, like, Alan, you have to fix this. Like, this is not okay anymore. Set a new standard for yourself. The moment you admit the truth of who you really are to yourself and sit in the emotional pain of that, as long as you believe you can change it, that's the key. You have to have a growth mindset. That's the moment you immediately start to improve it. I honestly don't think real improvement in your character can happen without the vulnerability of, wow, I really suck at this. I had to literally humble myself with being late. Like, I leave an hour early now. And it's like, I'm on time now because I finally humbled myself and realized, you know what, Alan, you're an optimist. You always think there's not going to be traffic. You always think there's not going to be construction. You always think you can get it all done. And you just keep letting yourself down. How long are you going to let yourself down before you go, you know what, I suck at this? The moment you admit you suck at something is the moment you immediately open up the door to getting better at it.
Fire.
Thank you, man.
Fire.
Yeah, that awareness piece is so powerful. And I, as you're saying that, I always come back to the finance thing too. And as a guy that's worked in finance for 20 years, I see this a lot. And so many people, that's just such a big one where we don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
We want to pretend it's not a problem. We want to pretend it doesn't exist. And as a result, it just gets further and further. So that's, just from a finance perspective, that first step is just having a look at your bank account, having a look at that budget and seeing, and that's a scary thing. And that's something I wrestle with. So I started doing something I called Money Date Monday, where I will have a money date with myself and just actually look at finances, because I've always been of the belief that if I just want more, I'll just go make more.
Right. Oh yeah.
Right. which is okay when, I was blessed and able to do quite well, but it's really not a great way to live your finances.
You get the feedback, either you get it a little bit along the way, and this is why the check-ins are so important. You're getting constant feedback and you get to readjust. Mm-hmm. Instead of flying from here to California, when you get over New York, you get to say like, are we actually on path here? Actually, no, we're headed down to Florida. Okay, right. We should probably switch this, right? And with anything, you don't have to weigh yourself if you don't want, but don't be surprised that when your wedding day comes, you're not where you want to be. Right. You get the feedback no matter what. You get to choose. You get it along the way, or you get it all at once. You can either check your bank account or you can go bankrupt.
Yeah, totally.
And you can control it if you want. It does suck though.
When you want to look at the truth the least, it's when it's the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. But that takes discipline, that takes commitment, and that takes courage. And that's a big piece of it. So anyways, guys, give me sort of the one big piece of advice. If you're going to leave people with one thing to take away and to execute on or to implement, what would that be?
I would say the biggest difference between the person you are and the person you want to be is your habits. And you might say like, okay, we didn't talk anything about that. Everything we talked about is, there you go. Everything we talked about today, you can form a habit. I guarantee this, like gold stamp guarantee. If you start doing check-ins in your relationship will either improve or you'll realize you shouldn't be in the relationship. Something will happen. Something will happen, but you have to make it a habit. Look, I didn't make it a strong enough habit. I didn't do it on Sunday when I was supposed to. That's on me, right? That's on me. Being vulnerable, that's a habit. Next time you have that bump, like, oh, I really want to say this, just say it. Is it going to suck? Yeah, maybe. Are you going to get into an argument? Maybe, but at least you'll argue over the truth. And then you can come to a conclusion about that. So if you can make these things habits, your life will look different in 3 months.
Fire.
Yeah. Alan?
So
Good luck. Hey, good luck.
It's tough to follow that, Kev. Tough to follow that. So yesterday, so Sunday we do our check-ins and we send each other sort of like a book report type of thing to each other based on the 6 human needs. Tony Robbins TED Talk. I'm not going to go into all that, and then we have a 7th need of sex. So we rate our intimacy from 0 to 10. We give 3 positives and then 1 improvement. And then those 5 original questions as well. One of them I already shared. And so those check-ins are incredible. I call them a catch-all to make sure that nothing's flying under the radar that we're unaware of, because you can't make good decisions based on false data or data you're not aware of. So the story I share about this is simple, and I did this yesterday. Okay, I want you to hypothetically imagine that there's a mother and a 2-year-old son, the terrible twos as they call them, and the son's super adventurous and wants to run off or learned how to crawl off. And God forbid the son gets hit by a car. Now, there's 3 people in this scenario that I believe have some level of influence on what happened. There's the mother, there's the driver of the car, and there's the child. Here's what I know for sure. It is not the child's fault. Maybe it's the mother's fault for not paying attention. Maybe it's the driver's fault for not paying attention, but it's definitely not the child's fault. Why? The child was not aware that cars are dangerous.
Right.
If you are out there right now and you have an awareness that you should exercise every day for your good health, you have a new awareness of the power of vulnerability. You have an awareness that alcohol in excess is bad. You now have the responsibility to do something about it. Life is about choices. Your life is a result of the compound effect of your choices. And the moment you admit that everything in your life was attracted to you by your own choices, even the way you responded to things done to you, that's the moment you take all the power back and you can design a life on your own terms.
Fire.
Yeah, that's so powerful. That's my tagline. When something's got to change, maybe it's you. and just owning that. Absolutely. All right, guys, before we wrap up, where can people find your work? Where can they find out about what you're all about? Where can they find the HyperConscious podcast?
You can find the HyperConscious podcast anywhere you listen to or watch podcasts. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, Alexa, everything. We're all over Pandora. The place. We're on everything. Nice. I take care of it all. And then you can find me on Instagram at NeverQuitKid. I have it tattooed on my arm, so I don't forget. Alan is at alazarus88. And we also are both doing free calls. So I am a podcast producer and I have an agency who takes care of people's podcasts, but I also help people grow, scale, and monetize there. So if you're a podcaster listening and you need some help, free 30-minute call, no strings attached. Just want to add as much value as possible.
Yeah, on those calls, the goal is not to sell, but to help you. We want to change the trajectory.
Well, I will report back on that because I think we're having one of those calls as soon as we hang up here.
Yes, we are.
Ask Mike how it was. We'll get a testimonial posted everywhere. So the HyperConsciousPodcast.com. Also, we have something called the HyperConsciousNation, which is a private Facebook group where it's honestly a group where people are really vulnerable. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jenna for posting a really vulnerable thing. It's a supportive community. All the things that you struggle to be vulnerable about, we literally booted somebody. I was vulnerable once. I cried on camera on a live reciting a Teddy story that really touches my heart. And someone made some negative comments to me and Kevin booted them that
Adios.
night. Gone. So It's a community where we support vulnerability. We support all of this stuff, hyperconsciousness, you name it. Also, every Monday we have masterminds. So we did one yesterday on the top 10 takeaways from 430 episodes. Every single Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't care if it's Labor Day or a holiday. We're always there. Monday, the doors actually open up at 5:30, so you can network with other people like this who like to be vulnerable. And
Fire.
Awesome.
Just a little bit about us.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being on. And I will chat with you soon. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.